So can everybody hear me? Double checking, double checking. That audio is working. Let me know, guys, if it's working. Please let me know that it's working. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, can everybody hear me okay? Come on, confirm. Let me know that it's working. Yeah, I know, right? Live with technical difficulties, no biggie, no pressure. That's right. Can you guys hear me? Let me know. Just confirm that you can hear audio. Testing, testing. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I know the video's a bit choppy. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to the screen. Let me know when you guys can see the screen, okay? Okay, you should be able to see my screen. Let me know if you do. Okay, everybody can see my screen. Please tell me that you can. Okay, good. Awesome. Okay. So from here on out, I'm going to assume everything is working. I don't have anybody who can man the chat right now. So if anything happens, I will occasionally, you may hear me stop. I'm going to jump back and just keep an eye on the stream in case something went wrong. I know you guys will let me know. Okay? So let's go ahead and get started. So first off, everyone, I want to thank you for your patience with me in getting this ready and running. I really appreciate it. I want to apologize for the confusion yesterday. At the end of the day, it was my confusion. So I apologize and thank everyone for being with us here today. So the goal of this webinar is going to be very, very tightly focused. The idea is that we're going to go over manual routing. Now, one may think that it's a very simple concept, and it is. It's just taking copper from one connecting point to another. But this engine on its own, we can spend several hours talking about. So I'm really just going to focus on the first mode, which is route manual. Okay? If you can understand route manual fully and what it's capable of, then the other tools that build on it are easier to understand, because the same shortcuts and workflows apply. Okay? So you're going to notice that you have several routing engines. You have route manual, you have route differential pair, and route multiple. Meander is a tool that's used whenever you're dealing with differential pairs, so it's kind of coupled to the differential pair mode. In this webinar, we're really going to focus on the route manual tool and how it works. Okay? So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to zoom into a couple of interesting areas here to show some of the functionality. Now this is one of the demo boards that came with Eagle, or that comes with Eagle, and I've chosen it because it actually is really nicely set up to show off a couple of functions in the routing engine. Okay, so that's why it's here. I am going to rip up a few things now just to start, so that way we have something to route with and some things we can check out. So I'm going to pick this one. I'll rip up here, rip up this one. We'll start with these two for now. Okay. So I'm going to click Route Manual. Now, there's a lot of useful features in Route Manual and a lot of different modes. And if you've ever, since most of you are familiar with Fusion, maybe some of you have AutoCAD, I've run into people who've actually tried to design PCBs in AutoCAD. They've been simple boards because making anything complex is quite painful. But if you've gone through that exercise, if you've gone through that experience, you're going to see why routing in Fusion Electronics is so much better and so much easier. Okay? So with Route Manual, you're going to notice that you gain these three modes. Okay? You have Ignore Obstacles, which is basically full manual. When you have this mode, you can literally do whatever you want. So I start the trace. I can go ahead and short across everything if I want to. I can create all sorts of damage. Now, before anybody wonders why on earth would you want that, there are occasions where you need to be able to kind of violate a rule. The walk around and the push and shove mode, which we'll talk about shortly, don't allow you to violate the rules at all. Okay? So on the rare occasion where you need to do something special, you can always fall back to this ignore obstacles mode. For a really long time, this ignore obstacles mode was the only thing that was available in Eagle. After the Autodesk acquisition, all of this other functionality started to come in. Okay? Now you're going to notice that it's using the layer that I have active. Okay? It will do that if whatever pad I click on is on that same layer. If I click on a bottom pad, a component's on the bottom of the board, then it will default to whatever the pad is. Okay? So you can see here, I have this segment and it's kind of cross-hatched. Okay? Once I left click to confirm that segment, it becomes solid. So the idea here is that this cross-hatched segment, this is the work in progress segment. Okay? This one can be fully tampered with, and you can see kind of how it's going to behave as you try to move around things. So if I activate walk around again, you'll see it's actually going to try to walk around it, and you can see the behavior. Okay? Got thicker. I can make all sorts of changes here. Okay? Now, if you decide at some point that you don't like the route, you can just backspace, and you'll see that you can go individually to each segment. Okay? And be all the way at the beginning. So if at some point you're going through the maze, you know, and you're working, and then you find, I don't like the way this is going, you can just backspace. And you'll be back to your beginning. Okay? So that's one of the first functions I want to highlight. The other one that I want to show you guys here is if you have this segment and you right click, you'll notice that it's going to try to switch to the complement. Okay? So when routing, and I'm going to go ahead and complete this segment and move forward a little bit. Okay? Let's say I want it to end at this point. Okay? Right now I have the bend this way. So look at the end of the completed segment and look at where my mouse is now. That's point A, point B. If you right click, you get the other path to getting from point A to point B, assuming the 45-degree angle, which is what we're using. Okay? So right click allows you to get the complementary bend of the same style. Okay? So if it helps to think about it, think of having like a parallelogram and you need to connect the diagonals. There's basically two paths you can follow. This is what you're doing here. Okay? You're basically trekking those two paths. Now with the 45, it becomes a parallelogram. If you have a 90-degree bend style, then you're looking at a rectangle. Okay? So moving diagonally from one point to the other on a rectangle. Since I have walk around on, if I get close, you'll see that it wants to walk around the obstacle. Now the distance maintained is the minimum DRC clearance, or if there's a net class defined, it will obey that. So it's following the rules. Okay, and that's the key point to remember about the walk around and the push and shove. They are completely subservient to the DRC and to the net classes. So they will not do anything that would incur in a violation. Okay? Now, you don't have to always go over here to change the bend style, right? Because that'll get old real fast. To change the bend style, you hold Control and you right click. And you'll see that you'll go through the various bend styles. And it'll just cycle. Okay, and this can be helpful. Most of the time, you're going to want to stick to a 45 if you can. Okay? There are many reasons for this, mostly aesthetic. It can help avoid acid traps, which basically this board, when it's formed, it's etched using typically ferric chloride or a similar type of acid. And what happens is if you have very tight corners, in the corner bend itself, you can get kind of acid accumulation there, and it will over etch. It'll cut into the trace a bit more. In really thin traces, like what you may find in high density boards, over etching can be a problem and can cause a board to fail. So typically we recommend doing 45s, but if you do 90s, it's not really, 90% of the time it's not going to be a problem. Okay, so we've seen how walk around works, right? It won't let me create a violation. Now, one thing that's interesting is if you notice as I move around, see here, you're going to notice that it kind of automatically changes the angle. Okay, so as you go around in the trace, you'll notice that it switches from this one, which was one complement, one path, and then as we go around and we break over here, it'll automatically adjust to the different complements as needed. If you ever find that it's not giving you the one you want, you just right click and you get the other one. Okay, but most of the time its automatic adjustment will work. Now, one thing you're going to notice that's interesting, okay, is that I can't really go backwards. Okay, it actually resists moving away in a direction that's not forward. Okay, and the idea behind this is to make sure that you don't waste time accidentally going backwards or have the trace respond in an unusual way. So by having this kind of limitation in it, it helps you kind of move in the direction you want to work in. Okay, with that said, if you do want to go back, it's very easy. You just make a few segments and work your way back. Okay, so that's one thing to note. Let me kind of bring this one over here. Now you're going to notice that it's adjusting. Okay, now if I hold control as I'm doing this, it's going to do like an ortho snap. Okay, you see how it's not, even though my mouse is below it, it's not necking down. Okay, if you're familiar with AutoCAD and many of the other Autodesk products, there's a mode called Ortho which makes it easy to make a straight line. Okay, so if you needed to make a long straight trace, you just hold down control and you know it'll maintain its angle. Makes it very easy. Okay, and it'll snap in 45-degree increments. So once I'm closer to there, you see what it does? So that's another thing that many users aren't aware of that's available in manual mode, but it's extremely powerful and it's something we recommend you use. So as you can see, there's a lot of shortcuts available in this mode. Now, one thing that we haven't discussed yet is how to transitions between layers, okay, using vias. Now you'll see here you have various via options. Okay, by default it chooses round. You can set up other defaults, but we'll stick with what we have here, round. Now there's multiple ways to transition between layers. The oldest way is to actually click your center mouse button. Okay, and if you only have a 2-layer board, it'll automatically pick the other side. Okay, if you have a multi-layer board, it'll pop up a dialog and ask you what layer do you want to transition to. Okay, so I'm going to left click and you'll see that now we're routing on the bottom. And again, I can backspace all the way back to there. Now the newer way that's a bit more efficient is you can use a spacebar. So if you hit spacebar, you'll see the via shows up on the end. I can place it wherever I want, and then I can continue routing. A couple of interesting things in this mode. If you press the spacebar, okay, and you want to place the via but you want to stay on the same layer, you hold shift and you left click, and now you stay on the top. Okay, that can be useful if, for example, you are dropping down to a ground plane but you're going to interconnect multiple components to a single via. That's where this comes in handy. Okay, so keep that in mind. You hold shift with the via active and then you can place it down. Now the via, one thing that's interesting is it will avoid, you'll notice that the routing engine's trying to make sure the via doesn't mess with anything, but, and now we're going to introduce push and shove mode, if we have this mode active, what you're going to see is that it will actually, I'm going to escape real quick just so we can see it better. Route again. Okay, you're going to see it's going to push everything in order to put the via. Now there's a limit to how much it can push, and that limit is if what's on the other side is a via, it won't move the via around. But as you can see, it will shove all of these traces around, and that happens with the trace on its own. So if I'm back on the top, I can actually get the trace to do it as well. Okay, and this is extremely valuable because what it will do is it will save you time. And let me show you the clearest example of this. I'm going to go ahead and backspace on this. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and rip up on the same layer, so I can't do just that one. Oh, right here, rip up. Okay, from here to here. Now if you look what happens. You see how as I'm trying to make some room, it pushes everything away? You guys can see that. Now if you see that circle pop up, it's letting you know that's as far as I can go. I cannot push any more than that. Okay? But I've made my room, and I can just okay. Normally, without push and shove, you would have to rip up all of these one by one, lay out the one you want, and then redo everything that you got rid of. Okay? So this is a huge time saver. It's an extremely powerful feature, one that we are super happy to have. I worked with Eagle since before the Autodesk days, and once we had this, I was surprised I could ever live without it. You know, it really makes that big a difference having these modes. So that's how they work. In the case of walk around, it won't move anything. It'll just avoid any obstacles in its path. Push and shove, as its name implies, if there's an obstacle it can't move around, then it'll try to move nearby traces and objects that it can move in order to finish a trace. Okay? So lots of power there. Now one thing that comes up often with these, and let me just take a quick moment, look at the chat, see if there's anything that has gone wrong. Let me make sure everything looks like it's working. You need to hold control to keep the ortho mode active. Okay? But it looks like everyone can still see everything, so I'm going to keep going, and then I'll come back to the chat and answer questions at the end, okay? So let's continue. Now let me show you an interesting feature, and it's this loop removal feature. Okay? So let's go ahead and check that out. Very cool feature. So I'm going to start this route. I'm going to drop a via here. I'm going to come down. Okay, put a via there. And this is going to be a bit contrived, but I just want you guys to see what you can do here. Okay. Now one thing you can do, let's say I decided later on I made some adjustments and I don't need this little via thing going on here, and I can just have it all on the bottom. One way you could do it is just ripping up these segments and then redrawing, but that takes time. So what you can do is, if you have loop removal on, whoops, my active layer needs to be bottom because right now it's favoring the top. So active layer bottom, okay, and you'll see how the layer of the order, the rendering order of the layers changes because of that. So I'll start here with the route command. Okay, you see that I started. And what's going to happen is, as soon as it sees that there is a loop there that can be removed, it takes it away. So everyone can see that. Okay, and this makes it very easy to rework traces. If you find that a trace is not optimal the way it's currently set up, all you have to do is just redo it. You just click on it and you redo it. Now, let's talk about something that's very important and that will come up. Okay, so you can see here we have this active layer, and if I click on a component that can route from either side, such as a pad, you're going to see it's going to prefer to start on that active layer. Now, what happens if I wanted it to start on the top? Well, one way would be to go over here, active, make it top, right? But that's a little annoying. That's going to take, especially if you have to do this a lot or you're constantly changing, that becomes annoying. So, if you hold Shift and middle click, you'll see that you can change what the starting layer is. So Shift middle click, I can go from top to bottom at the beginning. Okay, very important function. Shift middle click. I'm going to backspace again. Shift middle click. Now I'm on the top. I started as if I were on the top. Shift middle click. Started as if I were on the bottom. Okay. Something that comes up a lot and is not super well known. Okay, so it's something you want to keep in mind. Now, one feature that's really cool. You guys notice at the top the command line is active. So as you're routing and you decide, oh, I need to make it thicker, I need to make it smaller, you can just type in a number and hit enter. Okay, so it's going to assume whatever your grid units are, so what you have right here. And let's say right now it's at 8, as we can see here. I could obviously change it here, but if I just type, for example, 16 and hit enter, you guys can see trace is thicker. If I want to go to 10, just type 10, hit enter, it thins out. If I want to go back to 8, press enter, and you're back at the thinner trace. Okay, so it's a really useful trick that sometimes users aren't aware of. Okay, so this, let me make sure that this is everything I wanted to cover. I sometimes overlook a certain functionality of the manual mode. But I think that's everything I wanted to cover with the manual mode. So, a couple of things as a preview for a future webinar. We have these quick route tools. Okay, these are kind of a mix between full manual and auto routing. Okay, that's what they are. So notice we have several. We have smooth, multiple, signal, and airwire. Their names are pretty self-explanatory except maybe smooth, which we'll talk about in a second. Okay, Quick Route Airwire will basically, if you click on an airwire, it'll try to route the whole thing. Okay, so you see I clicked it. It'll try to work its way around. It may run into issues. It's not always guaranteed, but it will try to get everything routed. The entire airwire routed. Okay, in that case it wasn't able to. But many times it can do it, and it's really good for those quick straight line routes that every board has. So they're good to have. It's good to be aware of it. Quick Route Signal will try to do the entire thing. Now, if you use it on a signal like ground, then it's going to fail because there's just too many air wires, and there's a limit to how many air wires it can do at once. Okay. Multiple, similar idea. You can have a collection of air wires that you want to route at the same time. It actually has a pretty interesting selection mechanism, which we'll cover in another webinar. But it's the idea of having multiple air wires out at the same time. And now let me show you smooth, because smooth I always find interesting. What smooth does is when you click on a trace, it's going to try to see if it can clean it up, like it did here. I don't know if you guys saw that, so I'm going to Control Z. This is how it was before. And now if I click on the trace, with that option active obviously, you'll see that it tries to simplify it. It tries to minimize distance, and it tries to minimize the number of bends. So if while routing you tend to be very squiggly, you tend to have a lot of bends and stuff like that, this is a really nice tool for cleanup afterwards. Okay, so that's what we wanted to go over today. I thank everyone for their patience in getting everything set up. If you have any questions, if there was anything here, I'm going to go ahead and start answering questions. Okay, so feel free to post any questions you may have, and I'll do my best to answer them live now. Okay, let me go work my baby back. Okay, is this Eagle Infusion? A lot of the code is ported over. It's not the same exactly though, because of some of the fusion paradigms we were able to bring in. There's a lot of things that are available in Fusion that Eagle can't do. On the flip side, there's still a few features from Eagle that are not available in Fusion 360. So this is something that's being worked on. Trying to figure out, okay. So necessary programs, they do combine. Okay. Good tip on bends. Do you need to hold down Control to keep ortho mode active, or does it work as a toggle? No, you have to hold down Control. It's not a toggle. Okay. Be nice to be able to import KiCad schematics into Eagle. Thank you for that suggestion. That's something that we do at some point want to address, so thank you for that. Okay. If you have more than 2 layers, like you mentioned previously, will the shift plus middle click cycle between them? So I assume you're referring to the starting layer. In that case, if you have multiple layers, what it'll do is it'll pop up a dialog and ask you specifically, okay, which one of these do you want to go to? So if you have a 4-layer board, it'll ask you, okay, pick one. And then when you pick it, you'll be back in the routing mode and you'll have the trace on that layer. Okay. Download from okay. Any other questions, guys? No? Okay. So thank you very much again for joining us. Really appreciate it. I appreciate all of you for coming and your patience in me dealing with the technical difficulties at the beginning of the stream, and also for what happened yesterday. So thank you guys for coming in. I really appreciate it. You're going to notice there's a little bit of a lag, but you're going to notice a little error window pop up. Basically, as long as Fusion runs for more than 5 minutes, if it's not seeing anything done, it'll pop this up. Just hit OK if ever you see this and you're working. Yeah, if you see this little error message pop up, just OK it. It's just Fusion has a little thing that it doesn't expect the command to be running all the time like the select command can run all the time for. Okay, so just OK it. That's something we'll deal with in the future. So thanks everybody for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to end the stream. Please give us a like if you enjoyed the content. Thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe. We try to have these live webinars often. Having it be live makes it exciting because stuff can happen that you don't expect. So thank you very much, guys, for everything. Have a great rest of the day.